Whenever we're talking about India versus Pakistan matches in the ICC World Cup history, and that can be true of whether the ODIs or T20I format is considered, there's one thing that is more often than not bandied about, particularly by Indian fans, is that it is a very one-sided rivalry, and it's easy to understand why. In the history of all World Cup events, the first time that Pakistan had actually managed to defeat India came in 2021, which meant that before that, the only time, in fact, that they hadn't actually beaten India at any ICC World Cup event. In fact, even as of this, let's say, recording, India holds a 7-0 record when it comes to Pakistan at ICC ODI World Cups. In T20I World Cups, yes, there have been close encounters, but the simple fact of the matter is the wins column is far more for India than it is for Pakistan, who've only recorded the sole win. That's why the term one-sided rivalry is often bandied about. And again, as I said, it's easy to understand why. But is it necessarily correct? Well, what we've done is that we've basically done a deep dive into some historical numbers, and we're not just looking at ODI World Cups, but ODI games in general. And let's put it this way, the results might surprise you when you find out that it's not quite as one-sided as most of us like to think it is. First off, let's look at how it is that the India-Pakistan rivalry has played out in this millennium. So if you can see it right now full on your screen, since 2000, obviously the number of India-Pakistan matches, initially you had a fair few taking place in the early 2000s, but obviously post 2012 types that kind of fell off a cliff a little bit because of course India versus Pakistan bilateral matches weren't really happening a lot. But if you look at how it is, yes, in recent times, say 2018, 19 and 23 have been very one-sided as far as India, but again, look at the number of matches played, it's just 2-1-1. In fact, even in this time, there have been occasions where Pakistan have come out on top, and if you go back in history at a time when more matches were played, so say for instance 2004 and 5, you can see that Pakistan quite clearly had the edge when it comes to ODI matches. Now obviously that Pakistan team cannot be compared to the modern day Pakistan team because that was a Pakistan team full of a number of match winners, but historically it's nowhere near as one-sided as most people would like to see you believe. And yes, even though the numbers do skew in favor of India in recent times, it can often be a little less, let's say, one-sided when you're looking at the overall or the bigger picture. The same, by the way, holds true if you look at some other metrics. Now first off, if you look at how it is India versus Pakistan ODI matches go when it comes to teams that are chasing vis-a-vis teams that are defending, and this, by the way, I'll put a bit more context, but first, these numbers, as you can see right now on your screen, when it comes to defending a target, there have been 60 matches that have been held, and of those 45% have in fact been won, let's say, by India, whereas if you're chasing, 29 of those have been won, which is 42%. So again, it's pretty close when you look at it, but of course, if you're looking at the overall number, that is of course that from the 129 matches, India won more matches while defending a target, which means while bowling second, which means they batted first. However, this might be a little bit of an outdated, let's say, statistic to look at for one very simple reason. Modern day white ball cricket prioritizes being able to chase well, which means that teams prefer actually winning the toss, putting the opposition in, and then batting second, knowing what exactly the target in place is. But again, even if you look at these overarching numbers, there's not that much of a let's say, preferred thing, or there's not anything which makes it one-sided. Almost about as many matches have been won whilst defending a target as they have been whilst chasing a target. India versus Pakistan, even though the results do read somewhat in India's favor, isn't overwhelmingly one-sided as these numbers recommend. And in fact, it is true even if you look at, let's say, some match winners that are in the current India and Pakistan teams, and we'll go about in the next two slides comparing, of course, India's proverbial match winners. Now let's start off with looking at the Virat Kohli versus Babar Azam debate. Both definitely the star batters of their teams and the ones who carry their hopes, more so in the case of Babar and Pakistan than Kohli and India. But if you look at their World Cup records, and again, there's not that much to distinguish even when you take into the caveat that Babar hasn't played as many World Cups as Virat Kohli has. Look at the numbers. Kohli in 28 innings has scored about 1170 runs at an average of just over 50 at a strike rate of 86 with a highest score of 107 and 5 not outs during that time, 5 out of 28. With Babar though, again, the numbers aren't terribly different, because if you look at the numbers that matter here in terms of average, he averages more than Kohli, his strike rate is more or less the same, and his highest score of course is 101 not out. The key differentiator here between Babar and Kohli is that Babar more often than not tends to go not out, which is what gives his average here a significant boost, because again, out of 10 innings he's had a 1 not out, which is better proportionately, let's say, than what Kohli's has been, or it's there and thereabouts. But that average 54.3, again, 10 matches averaging 54, pretty good overall. And again, there's not much differentiating either of them, so it really depends on which of them has a really good day in theory. And the same can be said about the team's strike bowlers, where I would argue that the numbers are even closer. So if you look at the World Cup records of Jasprit Bumrah and Shaheen Shah Afridi, you'll realize that again, not an awful lot that distinguishes them. 11 innings for Bumrah, whereas Shaheen Shah Afridi has 7. 24 wickets to 18 wickets. Again, not a lot of difference, and both of them have an almost similar bowling average. It's shaded by Bumrah at 18.54, whereas Shaheen Shah Afridi's is 18.72. Where Bumrah is clearly superior is when it comes to his economy, because again, look at that economy, 4.27 to 5.33, which does tend to lead into the narrative that Shaheen, whilst lethal, can sometimes just be a little bit on the erratic side. Because if you look at their strike rates, again, 26 for Bumrah, 21 for Shaheen, and their best figures, Bumrah's is a 4 for 39, whereas Shaheen Shah Afridi's best are a 6 for 35. So again, as I said, there's definitely, let's say, more consistency on Bumrah's side, because those overall numbers very good indeed, especially that economy and that bowling average. Whereas with Shaheen, you know that on days when he does tend to perform well, he can be lethal and unplayable, because again, 6 for 35, if you remove those 6 wickets from his overall tally of 18, that means in 6 innings he's got 12 wickets, which averages to about 2 wickets a game. Not terrible, but again, that 6 wicket haul there really does add a lot. But it does lend to the original point of this video, which is that it's not quite as one-sided as it seems. Yes, more often than not, when you're looking at elite sport, you'll say that wins and losses are the ultimate numbers that matter, and who's won more games usually will claim superiority over the team that hasn't won in as many games, and that's fair. But it does also tend to be an oversimplified process. Let's say it can be a little too simple to say, you know what, this team has won this many games over the other, so they're automatically much better. It just means they have a better record. And as a deep dive showed, these numbers aren't as far apart as you may suggest, and with a little bit of, let's say, clinicalness and maybe even some more luck, you could have seen this number skewed a lot closer, or maybe even in favor of Pakistan. So it is definitely India who will be the statistical favorites, but as we said, look a little closer and you realize there isn't that much of a difference, which means that if all things go well, you could very well be in for the best of all worlds as an Indian fan. A close, thrilling game, but one that ends with an India win. At least that's how I feel about things. What do you guys think? You can let us know that in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell icon as well. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Don't forget to download the AajTak app, and if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done, and stay tuned. We have plenty more coming your way through the day, evening, and night. For now though, from my side, it's bye-bye.